This is To Help You Heal, and I'm your host, Marie Monville. We are going to spend 10 minutes talking about healing. What kind of healing do you need? Is it in your mindset? Is it emotional healing? Is it spiritual healing? You know, there's a lot of healing that we all need, and this is where you're going to find it every week, 10 minutes on Tuesday. I'm so glad you're spending this time with me. Welcome back to this week's episode of To Help You Heal. Last week, we talked about the reality that sometimes life doesn't look like a miracle. You know, we can be waiting on this thing, whether we're asking the Lord for it or we're going after something, and sometimes it just doesn't look like it's all coming together. It looks actually like the opposite, that we couldn't be further from the miracle that we desire, the miracle that we need, the miracle that we've been working towards. But, you know, that is the reality, that a lot of times it's not going to look like that. And I talked about several stories from the Bible where if we would have been living that experience, we wouldn't have thought that it was going to be a miracle either. And that's the thing. It's so much easier to see it when we're seeing the end of the story or reading the story with the end in mind. You know, I love the Olympics. I don't know if you're watching the Olympics right now, but I've been catching it bits and pieces here and there. And I love their stories. What's compelling to me are the stories. The people that, you know, if you just looked at their life experience or their background, you wouldn't have thought that they would have had an opportunity or they would have earned it or, you know, completed all of the training and everything to get to this place where they are. And those are the stories that are most compelling, the underdog stories, the stories where nothing looked like a gold medal finish until that moment when it was. And, you know, sometimes I think we need the reminder that the same is true for us. Because if we think about what does it look like to have a miracle? What is the definition of something miraculous happening in our lives? If you look it up online, you look at an online dictionary, it's going to tell you something like, well, the definition of a miracle is something that cannot be explained by natural or scientific reasoning. Something outside the realm of what is naturally possible or explainable in the world of the scientific. That's a miracle. But I think we have to ask ourselves, what's the definition by which we define a miracle? How do we perceive whether something fits the criteria of a miracle or not? Because I would imagine for a lot of us, you know, we have this whole negative self talk thing going on, and we're very good at identifying all the places where we don't feel like we measure up or the places where we could do better, whatever you want to call it. And so I would imagine for a lot of us, there are places that are miracles in our life experience that we've forgotten or we're just not seeing in that way because we're seeing it from the other side of the story. But where are the places in our lives if we make the correlation a little bit to those underdog stories, you know, those stories that are going to captivate millions around the world as we all watch the Olympics and hear about the training and everything they've overcome to get there? We're going to find out about their underdog stories. But where are our underdog stories? And is that not the context of a miracle? All of these places in our lives where we shouldn't have gotten to the point that we are, we shouldn't have been able to overcome the circumstance, and yet we have. So I want to ask you, what's your definition of a miracle? Because I've been asking myself that this week. You know, if I want to live in a place where I see God at work and I can identify the miracles that He writes in my story, maybe I need to challenge myself as to what even qualifies. What's a miracle? What's the thing that's not identifiable or explainable from the realm of natural or scientific reasoning? Do we not all have experiences in our lives that qualify as that? I think we do. And I think miracles happen more often than we probably imagine, or more often than we're aware of simply because of the way that we frame our definition. Because if we are looking at a miracle as saying, okay, it's this pinnacle moment where everything came together and it was so much more than I could have ever imagined or expected, it was way beyond. We're setting the definition as something extraordinarily high. But can't miracles happen in the day to day? Can't miracles be a part of everyday moments? What if our conversations were miraculous? What if the everyday was a place where we looked for miracles and believed in their possibility? What if we didn't just define it based on these extraordinarily large outcomes, but what if we told ourselves, I'm living a miracle? This life is a miracle. I'm the miracle. What if we looked at it through that perspective? I think that would change everything. And isn't that the truth anyway? You are a miracle. I'm a miracle. The life experiences that we have, the things that we've all overcome, sometimes we need to step back and look at it through a lens of objectivity and remind ourselves, here are all the things I've overcome. Here's where I started. Here's where I'm at now. And there's no way that that any of this makes sense. None of it fits in the realm of natural or scientific reasoning. I look at my life. I look at the life that I live as a 40-something-year-old adult where I went to college during the pandemic. I work with organizations and help them in their approach to people, all about creating the kind of culture that helps an employee to feel valued and seen and heard and makes the company a great place to be. I love what I do. And there is nothing about the progression of steps that I've had in my life that looks like that makes sense. You look at the experience as I had with my first husband being the man that committed the Amish schoolhouse shooting, just the very fact that I can say, without lying, that I love my life. No, I don't love all the circumstances of my life, but I love my life. Just that I can say that, that's a miracle. The ability to write and publish books and speak and meet people all around the United States and even around the world to encourage them with the belief that it doesn't matter what happens in your life. That's not the end of the story. It's what you choose to believe about yourself, what you believe about God in your story, and what you perceive as possible. That's what matters. For me to be able to say those things and mean them, that's a miracle. And it's not this thing that has happened by natural reasoning. It's not something I just created for myself. It's not something that you can explain by scientific facts either. It's more than that. And I think it's easy to forget that. It's easy for me to forget these places of my life to say, you know what? None of this lines up in the realm of circumstances. I can't trace this all back and say, oh yeah, all of this makes sense. I see how the experiences I've had, they have led me to this place. No, it's not like that. None of it made sense in the moment, yet God orchestrates it in a way that is miraculous. And I know that, yes, I've had experiences in my life that are different. That is the human condition. We all have unique stories and various life experiences, and none of them are the same. Even if you grew up in the same home, your life experiences are not the same as your siblings. And yet we can all say that. I believe that there are places that are miraculous in each one of our lives if we are willing to look at it from that perspective, to be objective and step outside of our individualized moments, these places where we're so fixed on whatever's going on right now. If we can step out of that and look at it to see the bigger picture and say, okay, I want to see this in reality. I want to find these places that are miraculous. I want to remind myself that I'm walking out a miracle. I think we're all going to find it. And it's not just because we have these big explosive moments in our lives, but again, I think it's all about what happens in the day to day, the choices that we make in ordinary moments. They lead us to these miracles. Because when I look back at my life, that's what I know. It didn't all come because of the circumstance. The circumstance doesn't make the miracle, it's how we respond to it. And we're not going to have necessarily these big catastrophic moments in our lives all the time. I mean, I hope not. And yet, we can still have these miracles because it's not so much about what happens to us, but it's about the way we choose to see it and what we choose to do with it, and our willingness to be able to say, okay, God, I think you're writing more in the story than I can see, more than I know, more than I could possibly ever imagine. And that is miraculous. So, friends, as we journey towards the end of this episode, I want to challenge you to step back and look at your life through that lens of objectivity. I want to encourage you to find the places in your life where you're already walking out a miracle because I believe that they're there. And if that feels difficult for you right now, if you're stuck in the midst of a story that's really hard, I also get that. And I want to help you through that. There's a link in the show notes where you can book a free session with me. We'll jump on a call, whether it's on the phone or on Zoom, or meet up local if you're close by here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I want to help you find your miracle. I want to help you see the places in your life that are miraculous. Because if we can find those places that have existed before, then I think we can have the courage to believe that God is still writing a story that looks like that now. So, what's your miracle? It's there. I believe that you're going to find it as you look for it. Again, if you need some help with that, grab the link in the show notes. Pop over to my website, mariemonville.com, where you can also find that link, or send me an email. However it is that you want to reach out to get that help, I'm here for you. And then come on back next week while we continue the conversation, looking for these places where we can find healing for our lives, healing that we need in the everyday, and change our perspective. Because isn't that what it's all about? That, my friends, is miraculous.